Hello everybody, it's Jackson Fulcher. We are back again for another list. This one is the Best Films of 2021 list. I said in the worst video that there was like one more movie I wanted to watch before completing it, and now I have watched said movie, and we are ready to go with this list. So that means basically, there's a ton of movies that have come out last year that obviously I did not get a chance to see. There's plenty of movies always like that in any given year. But I have seen everything that I have wanted to, or I have a personal kind of interest in, so that's why this list is now being completed, and I'm not waiting until I see like literally every single movie. So the same thing that applies for the last list, for every list that I've ever done, for anyone's ever done, will apply here as well. If I mention something that you disagree with, cool. I don't care to hear about how I'm wrong, though. If I don't mention something, either I haven't seen it yet or maybe I didn't like it just as much as you did, and that's totally fine. I look forward to hearing your guys' opinions on what you thought were the best movies of last year as well down in the comments below. But let's try to keep things respectful and nice, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. These are just movie opinions, and we can have a nice discussion about it. So without further ado, let's get into the honorable mentions for 2021 for Best Movie. If some of these movies seem a little low to you because currently they're, kind of up for a lot of awards, Academy Awards in particular, this is why it's a personal list as opposed to a, mathematically organized, like, ooh, this is getting the most awards, so let's put it up here kind of list. I just threw it like way down the table, sorry. Let's get started. The French Dispatch, The Scary of 61st, which is really fucked up. If anyone has Shudder, it's on there now. Wow, what a film. West Side Story, Titane, Ghostbusters Afterlife, Judas and the Black Messiah, No Sudden Move. That's one of like the millions of Steven Soderbergh movies that end up on HBO Max. This one I really loved. Encanto, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, In the Heights, King Richard, Finch, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Honestly, I'm surprised that that's on here as well. When I saw the trailer, I was not expecting it to be one of my favorite comedies of the year, let alone movies, but here we are. Fear Street, the whole trilogy was really enjoyable, but in particular, part 1 was my favorite. The Lost Daughter, Come On, Come On, The Vigil, Benedetta, which, if the Academy had any balls, they would have nominated Benedetta in Best International Feature. That's a fantastic movie. Saint Maud, Dune, Don't Look Up, Coda, and The Worst Person in the World. So those are my honorable mentions, movies that I really, really, really loved, and in some cases I wish I could put on a best list, but there's just 15 other movies that I enjoyed even more. But before we get to the actual list, I have two very, very, very special honorable mentions, only because of, well, I'll explain why when I get to them. First off, I want to give a special shout out to The Father, because last year when I did my best list, I was like, well, technically it doesn't officially release until, this date in 2021, so it's a 2021 movie, but I think more people consider it a 2020 movie anyways, so I just want to avoid people like commenting like, The Father came out last year actually, and it doesn't actually count. Like, alright, I'll give it a very special mention. If it was on this list, it'd be very, very, very high, like top 3 at least. If it was on my 2020 list, it might be number 1 or number 2. Fantastic movie. There you go. And the other one I want to mention, I'm only doing this because I have no idea where I would place it in the midst of all these narrative movies. Bo Burnham's Inside, a wonderful comedy special that becomes more than just like a I'm locked inside doing songs kind of silly comedy. It's like an existential crisis that is not helped by the pandemic and, of staying indoors and this social media claustrophobia that kind of comes in and surrounds you and affects your mental state, amongst other things. It's a really wonderful movie that, meant a lot to me personally when I was watching it. It got to me in a lot of ways. I just have no idea how I would rank it because everything else on my list is like a narrative film, and then all of a sudden I'm like, but where would I place this comedy special? So that is my full list of mentions, special shout-outs, all of that cool stuff. Let's get into the actual list here, starting off with number 15. When I first first saw the trailer for this movie, but first off, I've only seen Pain and Glory of the director's previous works, so I'm very unexperienced when it comes to the man. And also just watching the trailer, I was like, okay, it seems like just a fairly simple kind of motherhood drama. Okay, is this something I would, want to watch? It's getting awards buzz, so I don't know. And I watched it and I was kind of blown away. I wasn't expecting some of the different storytelling directions they took with it that kind of further adds to the drama. This movie touches on themes of motherhood, generational history, and they use that to influence why Penelope Cruz kind of makes some of the decisions that she does in her own mothering and her own life right now. And I thought it was really, really fascinating. It's a really fascinating look. And Penelope Cruz is just absolutely wonderful in this role. It's very well directed, a great score. Occasionally, it rings a little bit like soap opera-y because just the music will just come in and just take over the entire scene. But it's still good music despite the fact that it sometimes can distract from everything. But I really did enjoy this movie. It's beautifully shot. If I was just going off of crowd experiences, this would be like number one. This is a really big cheer fest of a movie, and it's kind of well deserved. This is a fantastic Spider-Man movie. They take this thing that could have made this movie a complete disaster, a juggling nightmare of like so many characters and narratives, and they somehow made it smooth. They wrote it out in a way that actually worked, that I was completely amazed by. I really loved this movie. I think John Watts really directed this movie really well. It's his best directed Spider-Man movies. It's Michael Giacchino's best scored Spider-Man movies. It's the best Spider-Man performance from Tom Holland. And of course, seeing the other two Spider-Men is just a treat to see. And they handled those characters so well, to the point where, me not being a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I would like to see them continue just so I can have more Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I'd like to see one more outing with Tobey Maguire even. It's weird because I don't usually, at least anymore, try to think of like, what's the future of the Marvel universe or this comic universe or anything like that. But after this movie ended, I was just trying to think like, what are they going to do next? What's the next installment for these guys? What's going on here? So I think that's a really high testament to how engaging this movie was. For a movie that doesn't have the same budget as Spider-Man No Way Home, though, this movie is one of the most stunning indie kind of more obscure movies to have come out this year. I say obscure just because it didn't do well at the box office, unfortunately, but it looks fantastic. This is just a really disturbing kind of quest led by Dev Patel, who, plays the role so well. But as you go along, you go to these like fantastical places that look so gorgeous and stunning, but there's like this seediness that kind of leaks around. I'm unfamiliar with like the original tale, so finally seeing it on the big screen and just watching it play out, I was like, this is fucked up, but I love it so much. It's directed so well, it's scored beautifully. It's just a really fantastic fantasy quest that just makes you feel like shit at so many points. The fact that like there's no like visual effects or like costume design or like set design recognition, at least for the Academy Awards for this movie, is kind of absurd. This movie kind of went all out. Another movie where I think it's absurd that it didn't get any technical recognition at some of these award shows. This movie, I think, was absolutely phenomenal. It's my favorite comic book movie to come out last year, simply because I think James Gunn really understands not just how to make characters work, how to, give them comedy that fits and how to really direct an action sequence, but he understands, like on a more deeper level, how to get you to connect with the characters. He loves the characters that he writes, and that totally shines through. I don't mean to compare, especially in a best video, but when that first Suicide Squad movie came out, when it was done, I was just like, whatever, I don't care. But after this movie ended, I wanted more, I wanted to know more about Bloodsport. I wanted to see more Ratcatcher. I wanted to see more King Shark, and even for the people who died, I was like, I would love to see these characters more. It's a bummer that a lot of them get fucking killed, but I mean, James Gunn really makes you care about these characters, in some cases in a short amount of time. And I think that's just a great testament to not just him as a filmmaker, but him as a storyteller, like through and through. He's one of the best. And so movie that kind of sneaks up on me as far as how emotional it kind of gets near the end. It's not one where it's like very obviously beating you over the head with like, you're gonna cry now, this is the big emotional scene. Not that that's bad in any movie, but this movie I'm just really impressed with how in that bit in the end where Ratcatcher 2 is pointing the rats and they cut to the flashback, from that moment on it always gets to me, you know, emotionally. And the first time I saw it, it was a surprise that it snuck up on me like that. I've seen No Time to Die 3 times now, and it is one of the best looking blockbusters to have been made in recent years. It's fantastic, you know, for Daniel Craig to end his Bond career with this movie. What a great way to go. This movie just keeps getting better and better for me for each rewatch. I've enjoyed his performance as the character so much over the years, and I love how it has evolved and grown into this movie. Léa Seydoux is really great. They actually have really great chemistry here as opposed to Spectre. They made that relationship work, and they went in some interesting directions with that story that I thought was really appropriate and very interesting to see Bond be put through. Werewolves Within is easily the best video game movie ever made. This is technically based off of a video game, but it plays as just like a whodunit, which is amazing, you know. Finally, thank you, Josh Rubin, director of this movie. This movie was so entertaining. I love the direction behind it. The snowy landscape surrounding everyone stuck in this cabin was perfect. I just love at one point, every single character is really fun, and they have like some really great jokes back and forth, some really great dialogue, and the actors are playing it up well. But at a certain point, it just gets fucking nuts, because every single character has something going on, and they all kind of, whether they are the actual killer or not, the killer that they're trying to find, they just start colliding in many different ways, and it's just a fucking mess, and I absolutely loved it. Nightmare Alley contains a performance that I think should win Best Actor, but it is not nominated. Bradley Cooper, who continues to impress me in, like, everything. You know, every time he pops up, I'm like, man, this guy should be, you know, winning every single award for everything he ever does. So I'm bummed that he wasn't nominated for Best Actor for this role, because it is quite seedy and it's quite fascinating, especially on a rewatch, to really, like, pinpoint, like, what exactly the character is thinking when he's just staring off and, like, puzzling to himself. He's just a really fascinating character, and I think Guillermo del Toro took the original movie and the original novel and just updated it in a way that I think really, really worked. The ending of this movie, as opposed to the original, is much better. It's just that perfect, like, bam, shut, you know, kind of ending that I think just works so well for the story that we have just been watching. It's a beautifully directed movie where everything looks gorgeous. The cinematography, the musical score, the rest of the cast is incredible. Cate Blanchett is just icy cold in this movie, but she is devilishly good. I could not get enough of her and Bradley Cooper in this movie. Just everything about this I think is really fantastic, and I think it's not getting as much recognition as it deserves. It really is a movie that, like, got under my skin, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for several days. You know, it's just the nightmares told by Guillermo del Toro. What a legend of a filmmaker. I am there day one for anything else he ever does in his life. He's just, one of my favorites. I saw this movie for the first time a couple days ago. This is the last thing that I put on my list. Worth the wait, for sure. This is a fantastic movie dealing with, you know, grief and moving on in your life from said grief, how you process that, though, how it may affect, you know, the art that you put out to the world, how you may shape art around somebody's legacy or your own legacy. This movie is really fantastic. It opens with a 40-minute prologue, and once the 40-minute mark hits, that's when they finally show, like, you know, opening credits, which is, like, amazing to think that anyone had that much restraint, you know, to hold on to. But it's almost kind of perfect, you know, because of the way everything is structured. There's, like, plenty of moments where, like, I was thinking if this was going to be remade by America, they would cut out so much of it. But the beauty of this movie lies in exactly how it's directed, how it's been structured, and you can't really lose any of these beautiful moments where they just keep the camera going in a sequence and just have characters talk and talk and talk. It's a wonderfully acted movie, beautifully directed, and I wouldn't say there's like a twist, but there is like a, you know, revealing of information that's not really important for like a larger stakes thing. It's just like a personal thing as our two lead characters are trying to bond more, and it's quite powerful. I really, really love this movie. Censor is a movie about a woman who works as a censor in a film studio or distribution company, trying to censor out really gross, disgusting things in these video nasties that are found, that they get sent to them, and she recognizes something familiar in one of the video nasties, and that is the, you know, kickoff point for what was one of the most interesting, fascinating, really disturbing movies that I saw last year, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's just such a really fantastic idea that just continues to get more freaky, and you're not really quite sure, is everything I'm seeing true? What is actually happening? Is this character just really messed up? Oh my gosh, you know, and it never lets up until the very end, and it's, what an ending that movie has too. It ends in like this really fantastic way that I don't want to spoil, but once, it's one of those endings where you think you're seeing one thing, but they let little bits of, here's what's actually happening, kind of leak in, and it's like, holy shit, you know, this is so fucked up, and I love it. Speaking of how Bradley Cooper, I wish he was getting more recognition for Best Actor, I think Simon Rex also could definitely use more of that. Him in this movie, he's fantastic. You know, this is easily the best I've ever seen of him, and I've seen Scary Movie 3, but in all seriousness, he is so good in this movie. It's like the role was kind of made for him. He was born to play this role. He's a guy that you might even know yourself personally, you know, fast talking, almost like always trying to get a hustle going or try to, you know, woo someone over to their side by just constantly talking about how great they are and how smart they are. Just, you know, it's really incredible work he does here. And it gets into some really dark, kind of seedy places, this character. And it gets really even more so fascinating to watch him like try to justify it, try to, you know, convince himself this is what I have to do, this is what needs to be done. It's really crazy stuff, and it's beautifully directed, despite the fact that it's not like you're in like the most breathtaking place in the world or anything. Like, no, most of this movie kind of takes place in this small town, and you're seeing a lot of just like, you know, usual kind of places like, hey, here's like a couple houses, like a low income houses, and here's like a donut shop. Here's just a long stretch of road. It's not like the environments are like uber breathtaking or anything. It's just the way it's shot. Sean Baker just has a really great eye for these fantastic images, using stuff that you wouldn't think would potentially make a fantastic image, but this is it, you know? It's a really great movie, and it's an ending that I can maybe see some people like being upset by, just by it being abrupt maybe, but I think it's kind of a perfect ending, you know, just like, you know, as far as like talking about, you know, people like this, usually they can't break a cycle, so they keep going, they just keep going and keep rolling until they eventually potentially make something work. Really great stuff. I think it's really fantastic. Paul Thomas Anderson directs a beautiful movie here with fantastic cinematography, a really great capturing of the era, and a movie that I found really funny as well. And you have two leads, Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim, who work off of each other really well. And both of them are in different places in their life, where Cooper Hoffman is just trying to, you know, make a start somewhere, you know, try to start something in his life, but he's still in high school, but he's very opportunistic. And Alana Haim has, you know, been a graduate of high school, and she is just kind of feeling like she is stuck, and she hasn't found a way to make her life worth it yet. So when these two meet, you know, there's certain things that they admire about each other, and even though it's not really, I wouldn't call this movie a romance, despite some people trying to say that it is. It's kind of more so like just admiration for each other. Cooper Hoffman is definitely like overtly trying to say like, hey, let's go out, because he's the younger one, but there's like a genuine friendship there that goes through hurdles, and they reconcile as friends for a lot of it. It's just a really entertaining, very heartfelt movie that has a wickedly wild Bradley Cooper performance as John Peters. Oh my god, what a man. I've seen this movie twice now, and I think this is definitely, just to put a prediction out there, I think this is going to be the one to win Best Picture out of all the nominees. This is just such a fantastic movie. Jane Campion has such, confidence behind the camera. Just every single shot looks fantastic, but also it's edited to perfection for me, where everything is kind of paced out exactly how it needs to be. And it's just so mesmerizing. Benedict Cumberbatch is just so sleazy and disgusting in this movie, but the thing about his performance is you can, especially for me, since I did a second viewing of it, you can kind of see him as the character making decisions in his mind about, I'm going to do the worst thing possible now because he himself has put up a front. He is not really acting like himself. This is just what has been made of him after being in this lifestyle. And he's incredible in this movie. So is Cody Smith-McPhee, so is Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons. Really great cast rounding this whole thing out, and it really, it sneaks up on you as far as, what's going to be happening here. You have this drama that's building and building, and pieces are slowly getting put in place, and then it hits you with an ending that really works and is really satisfying. The Night House is a horror movie that I really love, led by a performance from Rebecca Hall that I also really enjoyed. I thought this movie was really well directed, especially for it being a horror movie. Very easy to put in a jump scare and just have that be the scene that you have directed today. But what The Night House does differently is that they find a way to almost kind of reinvent what a jump scare is in certain scenes that I found really impactful, and it really put me on edge. And especially the way they play with the imagery later in the house and in this kind of nightmare kind of sequence. It's just really great stuff. It's a movie that has stuck with me for a very long time, and it's a movie that I sometimes will think about yeah, that was really creepy. That is an image, this cinematography moment I'm thinking of, that is an image that's really striking and haunting, and just this, oh my god, the idea of some of the scenes in general, how it gets really disturbing and how they kind of parallel Rebecca Hall's mental health with what's literally happening. It's, I think, really well done stuff. Last Night in Soho is easily my favorite horror movie to come out of last year. I love Edgar Wright, so I'm biased, but it's my list, who cares? This whole thing is biased, you idiot. I really love his movies in general, and this is just another one that I think he hit right out of the park. For his first full-on horror feature, there's not really a moment in this where I thought he could have done better here, or maybe he could have done this differently. I thought he just had a really great vision for this story, for this movie, and he absolutely nailed it. It gets absolutely kind of visually insane as it goes on, but I think it all worked. It's kind of a movie that's perfectly him. There's so many of his director trademarks, it's not like he completely abandoned it just to make some other kind of movie. No, he wanted to make a horror movie, but his way, and that's exactly what is coming through here. Absolutely loved that. Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie steal this movie for sure. They just work so well together, and they lead this movie so well. Mass is my number one favorite movie of the year. For a while I was like, maybe it's Last Night in Soho, maybe it's Mass, but I decided, there is no other movie this year that emotionally impacted me the way Mass did. This is a movie that is pretty much almost entirely set inside of one small room, and two sets of parents are talking with each other about something. I won't tell you if you don't know, because more people need to watch this movie, and barely anyone has seen it. It had a big awards buzz earlier in 2021. People were like, yeah, it's going to be a lock for sure, and then it just disappeared, and barely anyone's talking about it, which is a big bummer. But so I won't spoil a lot of what they're saying, but it's just so heartfelt. It's just gut-wrenching, and the actors are so good. This is some of the best acting to come out of last year. Just these four people with great dialogue, with interesting, engaging stories, just bouncing off of each other and letting the drama ensue, but also giving time to heal these characters. It's beautiful stuff. And for a movie that takes place entirely in one room, it's still very well made. It's well shot. Everything is well thought out. I really love this movie. And Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, and Ann Dowd in one point in particular, like, I was trying to single out, like, one person who, like, really ripped out my heart, but really, it's, like, all four of them in so many different parts just rip my heart out, stomp on it, and then give it back to me, and expect me to live afterwards. Like, yeah, go on with your day and live a happy day, live a happy life. Like, wow, I'm gonna be thinking about this movie forever. You just made me depressed, yet somewhat hopeful, which is crazy. But that's it. That's my top 15 favorite movies of 2021. If you haven't seen any of them, I hope you check them out. If you have seen all of them, cool. Let me know what your favorite movies were of 2021. Let's have a cool conversation about movies we all love in the comments below as we move forward with 2022. I'll see you guys next year for more lists. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll finally stop. Or maybe I won't. We'll see. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.